It's 5 minutes past the hour, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining in today's very important conversation. I see the chat is already warming up. Guys are telling us where they're coming from. You're very welcome to just add on to it and, you know, write where you're listening in from or what you do. And, you know, it will be very important for us to be able to also get this information to contribute to enrich the chat as the speakers are going to speak today. But good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Angela Chukunzira. I work for a project called Project Ether and the Siasa place. Ether stands for Ethical Tech Ecosystem for Human Rights. And so we basically look at the intersection of labor and technology. And we work with also specifically youth organizations and other CBOs based in Kenya and across the regions, a few across the region. And for today, we are going to just look into the feminist labor issues. This is a follow-up conversation from last week. This is a webinar series. And so the series we are trying to look for a feminist position towards the International Labor Convention that's happening this year in June. This is the 113th session that will happen this June. So we're in collaboration with other organizations, including the Nawi Collective, Siasa Place, of course, has been involved, ILAW, and all that, where the other speakers are coming from. You know, it also shows what the future of work should look like. The future of work is very collaborative, and that is part of the feminist position. Like, you know, when people are building up about what the future of work looks like, for us, we really think of collaboration is very key. And now as technology, and in last week's session, they talked about every worker being precarious and how they want the tech to be able to create a perfect worker. But here we are pushing back. We're trying to say it's the human workers who make these things, who build these things. And we're so lucky today that we have a panel where most of the people who are actually involved are workers behind these technologies. And so it's a mixture of workers and some labor practitioners. Some people are very passionate about these issues. And so it's going to be a very exciting panel ahead. So just a few housekeeping rules. It will be kind for everyone to keep their mic muted unless they're speaking, and interpretation is available. If you speak French, there's a space where you can be able to get the French interpretation. And for now, I'll just brief why we're meeting. Why we're meeting is a follow-up of the webinar series. I think I had already briefed that before. And so we really want to build on a feminist position towards the ILC. And so I will not take further time, but introduce the panel, let the panelists introduce themselves as they come in. But I will start with Jackie, who is first on the list. So she can go ahead and introduce herself.
Just Angela, just to confirm, so we just do a round of introductions first, or we just introduce and present?
Introduce and do your intervention, and then we keep going. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So good morning, everyone, afternoon, evening, from wherever that you're joining. My name is Jacquline Wamai. I'm a workers' rights lawyer. I'm coordinating our work in Africa from the International Lawyers Assisting Workers Network. And I'm glad to be here today. And today, my interventions will really be looking broadly at the labor rights in the platform economy in Africa, looking specifically on the legal landscape and also strategic litigations that have been initiated, but also looking at whether there's been any emerging frontiers, especially on the legal landscapes. And thank you so much for the organizers for convening this important dialogue. Just looking at Africa, we've seen a rapid growth of the digital platform economy, from e-hailing drivers to delivery riders and to content moderators in different parts of the continent, but also microtaskers, labelers, and also content creators. And mostly we are seeing more and more youths turning to platforms for jobs, but also incomes. But while these jobs are often promoted as flexible, innovative, and even sometimes lucrative for many workers, They are normally marked by informality, precarity, and also a huge lack of any kind of protection. And this means that most workers are often exposed to vulnerabilities. And what we are seeing is that the jobs are actually existing at the intersection of multiple forms of exclusion, which includes not only technological, but also legal and economic. What we've seen currently in the region and of course globally is the increasingly reversal of hard-won labor rights. And this essentially effectively pushes us back to the commodification of labor, and workers are frequently misclassified as independent contractors. They are also subjected to triangular employment relationships or even lack of formal contracts altogether. And this misclassification, or of course lack of classification sometimes, has often excluded them from very key fundamental labor protections, which includes one, the right to freedom of association and collective bargaining, occupational safety and health standards, protection, of course, from discrimination, forced labor, and child labor, and absence of social security or any form of social protection. There's been various reports that have been published by different organizations. And for example, just yesterday, we had the launch of a report titled Gig Trap by the Human Rights Watch. And these reports that have been compiled over time, and this also includes reports by the International Labour Organization, show systematic vulnerabilities of workers on one hand, but also on the other hand, we see the role of digital platforms when it comes to determination of pay rates, imposition of penalties, deactivation of accounts, which of course is unilateral, and etc, etc. And I'm really glad that today we have speakers who will be speaking from these lived realities that they face every day in the digital platforms economy. So when examining Africa's role and also positioning in the digital supply chain, it's very clear that the continent mainly occupies the lower end. And this means that the situation involves the exploitation of labor, data, but also resources to fuel this digital age capitalism. Yet, the reality is that this has not led to significant improvements in the livelihood of workers. But let me flip it over to what does the legal and policy environment look like, especially the conclusion is that we have very outdated frameworks, and also we've seen missed opportunities when it comes to regulation. And this means that regulations do not often reflect the realities of workers in the digital labor platforms. And the labor laws in the region, we've seen that, of course, they are designed to protect workers in formal employment relationship within industrial settings. And these laws typically define employees based on fixed workspaces, but also direct supervision and formal contracts, which is not a reality for the digital platform economy. And in many jurisdictions, we've seen that there is no legal recognition for digital platform workers. And, but on the other hand, we have national constitutions that have given rights. And we have these rights under fair labor practices clauses, which entails fundamental rights and freedoms at work. And this typically applies to all workers. And I want to emphasize on the term workers and not only employees. And we have examples of constitutions in Kenya, Uganda, South Africa, and among others. We've also seen social protection systems that are tied to formal employment. But however, in recent years, there have been some attempts by governments of different countries to expand social protection to workers, despite their employment status. And an example is Zambia, which has a statutory instrument that aims to expand social protection to informal economy workers, including the self-employed workers. But however, despite these developments largely rely on individual contributions to these social protection schemes or systems, with a lack of legal mandates compelling digital platform to extend welfare or social security protections to workers. And also, when you look at regulatory authorities, we've seen a struggle to enforce any type of labor standards against global platforms that have been operating through local subsidiaries, third-party agencies, or even through algorithmic management, which is part of the digital labor platforms. But also we've seen data protection laws, which are increasingly being used to regulate digital platforms. For example, we have a regional binding instrument from ECOWAS. We have South Africa's data protection law, POPIA. We have Kenya Data Protection Act. We have Nigeria, and among others. But the reality is that gig workers may have limited awareness of their data protection rights, or even may feel pressure to agree to platform terms that could actually compromise their privacy, but also their data. Attempts to regulate digital platforms have been made in different countries. And I'm going to give an example in Kenya, where we have ongoing discussions at the Ministry of Labor level to amend labor laws, particularly on occupational health and safety and health regulations, to really reflect the realities of platform workers. But also in South Africa, we've seen different deliberations. But the progress remains very slow, fragmented, but of course, often poorly enforced. On the other hand, we have sectoral-based regulations. And I'm going to give an example in Kenya, where we have, in 2022, the Ministry of Transport in Kenya adopted the regulation, which is called the Transportation Network Companies, Owners, Drivers, and Passengers Regulation, which basically sets the maximum commission that platforms can charge to drivers at 18%. But also, in addition to this cap, it also protects drivers from arbitrary deactivation, and also it obligates companies to really ensure that all vehicles have insurance and comply with data protection laws when processing drivers and also customers' data. Generally, there's a gap when it comes to harmonization of laws at the Africa level, and also at the regional economic blocks, since we don't have any kind of comprehensive digital labor standards, of course, leaving a regulatory vacuum. So when it comes to how a strategic litigation has been used as a tool for justice and structural change in the region, we've seen some emerging tendencies, especially when it comes to pushing and also challenging injustices and pushing the boundaries of labor laws. And this has enabled workers to use strategic litigation, and also advocates to test how existing laws might apply to platform work, and also to demand recognition, dignity, but also accountability. And I'm going to give some few examples. In South Africa, we had the Uber case, which was brought demanding recognition of Uber drivers as employees. But of course, this was contested, and despite the failure of having a positive ruling, what it did is that this case raised public awareness and began also to shift the narrative that surrounds the e-hailing sector in South Africa. But also in Kenya, litigation and advocacy around the working conditions of outsized content moderators have been used. And of course, it's the issue of content moderators undergoing traumatizing conditions to filter violent or abusive content. And this has also garnered global attentions. And these cases are still ongoing, so I'm not going to speak more about them. And also, we've seen a couple of cases which has been brought under the Transport Network Companies regulations and the Data Protection Act. And these mainly emanate from alleged high commissions, unfair deactivation, breach of data protection laws, failure to share deactivation policies, breach of contract, among other issues. Some cases have been decided and we've seen some wins, but some are still ongoing. And we've seen some of the decided cases restoring the rights of workers, especially when it comes to data protection issues. And recently, we've had a case that has been filed in court regarding content moderators, which has involving the issues of occupational health and safety in terms of the workplace. So these cases have raised important questions about workers' rights, including the right to freedom of association, mental health protections, but also the issue of jurisdictional accountability when it comes to multinational platforms operating in the region. So despite different challenges as jurisdiction issues, arbitration clauses in contracts, and workers' classification, we've seen litigations sparking some victories. For example, in Kenya, courts have affirmed that they have jurisdiction over cases against digital labor platforms, and this has allowed them to proceed. That is the cases. And of course, we've seen petitions being filed before legislators. And for example, the Digital Border Association in Kenya recently filed a petition before the National Assembly seeking the enactment of laws, but also regulation to protect these riders and ensure fairness in their operation within the transport network companies. The petition is very important because it highlights the need for a clear legal and regulatory framework to address the specific challenges that the digital border riders are operating through online platforms. So these efforts combined in terms of legal remedies and all that, we've seen that it's about movement building, it's about visibility, but also transformation of societal and judicial understandings when it comes to what work really looks like in the digital age. So just in conclusion, I would say that in order for us to have inclusive, but also equitable digital work, there are different things or avenues that we can exploit, especially when the digital economy has exposed worker exploitation, and also providing us an opportunity to reimagine how labor protections and fair and level playing field for businesses would look like. And to achieve these, there's an urgent need to update labor regulations to really reflect the realities of digital platform work, but also ensure that all workers, despite their employment status, have access to fundamental rights and freedoms at work. So secondly, there's a need to establish legal mandates that compels digital platforms to really extend welfare and also social security protection to workers working in the digital platform economy. And thirdly, there's a need to enhance awareness and also enforcement of data protection rights among workers in the digital platforms, and also work through the loopholes or the gaps that are still existent in the data protection laws that we currently have in different countries in the region. And finally, there's a need to develop harmonized regional approaches when it comes to digital labor platforms in the region, in Africa perspective, and push, of course, for a global binding standard for the digital platform economy. And this means getting engaged at the International Labour Conference and hoping that we have a global standard when it comes to the digital labor platforms. By addressing these areas, we can really work towards having a new social contract in the digital economy that ideally upholds all the dignity, but of course, rights of all workers who are working in the digital platform economy. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jackie. That was an amazing intervention. And I liked the fact that you used the word, we need to reimagine how the systems operate. And I know you're a lawyer, but I also feel as though there's such a disconnect between the legal aspect and workers' power and how technology is also evolving. the rapid evolution of technology, sometimes the legal aspect can never catch up. So I think it's very important that as we are creating a legal framework and we're thinking like, this is what the law should say about workers or employees, because we are all precarious. I don't even know if employee will exist anymore, or what does a worker look like, you know? And so I feel as we evolve and as we rethink and as we reimagine, one thing that we must weave into this imagination is that worker power must be the base of it all, because then we are able to bypass the legalities and everything else that's going on, because workers are the ones to build these frameworks of what a feminist labor and future of work looks like for them. I won't talk much. I will introduce the next speaker, who is Fairuz. Kindly unmute, introduce yourself, and go on with your intervention. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Fairuz Mullagee, and I am in Cape Town, part of the Centre for Transformative Regulation of Work at the University of the Western Cape. I assume you can all hear me. Yeah, good. Yeah, thank you to the Now We Collective for organizing this event and for inviting me and giving me the space to share the work I've been doing. I'm a researcher at the center, at CENTROW for short. And I see Pat Horn is part of this, and we actually just, we're in the process of, we co-hosted with the International Association of App-Based Transport Workers, also a consultation, an African consultation in preparation for the ILC from the transport workers' perspective. So I work with transport workers and I also work with domestic workers. So two very vulnerable sectors where we've seen quite a strong emergence of engagement of workers in the platform sector. But I want to just sort of backtrack a little bit, and thanks to Jackie for setting the scene with the kind of legislative input, where we're at, what's required, and so forth. And I understand that, it is necessary to develop labor standards, codes, for protection of workers. But I also want to caution us. I was part of the making of Convention 189 for domestic workers, which was adopted at the ILC in 2011. That's 14 years ago. How many African countries have ratified? I was horrified. I did a check again, just to see, this is where we're going. And this is sort of one of the sectors that I've been working in. So where have we gone? What's the score in terms of, just countries adhering to and plugging into the existing codes? Only 5 African countries. 34 countries in the world have ratified Convention 189, 14 years later. And so why I feel it's necessary to caution us on that, while it is very important, it's absolutely important, and that's why we were willing to co-host also with the transport workers, because that is also a kind of global consultation towards international labor standards. It's important for us to have that. But I do believe it is more important for us to localize those, the standards, that it is done in a way that it is realistic. And we know that it's implementable, because we spend a lot of time engaging at that level. And I just felt, we're talking now about digitalization of labor also on the continent. What does that really mean? I want to, just sort of stick to my brief a little bit and look at some of the research that has been happening. And the research landscape on digitalization is dynamic, it's multifaceted, And it's also shaped by technological advancements and, you know, the surrounding environment. Happen to be in an academic institution. And yes, the academic landscape surrounding digitalization and labor in Africa is evolving, but still requires a lot more empirical research. Credible evidence is a necessary basis for targeted interventions and also for maximizing impact. Because at the end of the day, that is very important, because we can have the laws, but how do we give expression to those laws in the communities that we work in, among the workers that we are targeted? And yes, researchers have emphasized the need for targeted policy interventions that address both the opportunities presented by new technologies, but also the risks associated with job displacement. And I think Jackie has also kind of looked at, you know, issues of misclassification, informality, erosion of workers' rights, and that is so fundamental. You know, we talk about the technology, but who is behind that technology? Who manages that? Whose interests are served by that technology? And I do think we need to pay attention to that as well. And it's about, you know, about humans. What is the basis? What is the kind of social justice aspirations of those, of the research that we're doing, of the laws that we are creating and contributing to? I think that is as important as engaging in the discussion around AI. There's a growing focus on upskilling, and again, back to research, there's a growing focus on upskilling and reskilling programs to prepare African workers for the demands of the digital economy. Researchers are examining how these technologies can promote inclusive economic growth, reduce inequality, and increase access to education and other basic services. I've also noted that there is underrepresentation of research in the informal sector, especially empirical research. So while, you know, as with the legislation, there's a lot of research that's happening, but many of that is small-scale studies lacking interdisciplinarity and coherence. And there is work to be done in that field. You know, there's competition among organizations. I mean, I can't tell you how many initiatives I've been approached by, you know, to work on studies on the continent. And there's no connection between the two necessarily. You know, the same countries are involved, but there's just a disconnect in terms of bringing coherence into that field. But I'll just, based on some of the research, I've just highlighted three key findings, which I would like, you know, to kind of carry through also to some of the emerging issues. So for me, one, mobile penetration is high in many parts of Africa, but internet access and affordability remains a problem, especially in rural areas. So mobile penetration is is quite high, while platforms provide income opportunities. And for me, this is so critical. They often exacerbate financial insecurity and volatility of income. So it provides an opportunity on the one hand, access to employment, access to interaction, but it brings the same insecurities that we have in a kind of, you know, in a non-digitized economy. And equally, and so for me, the third key finding is the weak enforcement of labor laws. in the gig economy that results in a point that that Jackie also made earlier, and that is erosion of workers' rights. We've seen it happening over time as workers become non-standardized, and erosion of those rights have just been exacerbated through tech. So while it appears to be offering opportunities, it is also seriously eroding hard fought for rights of workers. Based on all of that, I mean, you know, that's kind of background and context. So what are the emerging issues? And I just want to flag 4 of what I consider to be important emerging issues. And the one is AI and data colonialism. Where does Africa fit into this in terms of, you know, the kind of tech oligarchs that we have seen emerging and the power they have? So AI and data colonialism, and these are emerging issues that need further work. Remote work and outsourcing. Africa has become a destination for digital outsourcing, call centers, content moderation, and Kauna. Great to see you on the platform, because you will definitely give us more on that and what the gaps are, what is the space for further work in this area as well. Digital labor organizing. There are new forms of organizing. The session I've just come out of now with the transport workers as well, there was a lot of, there was critical engagement around the institution of trade unions, for example, who have actually, people, you know, there was quite active engagement around issues of trade unions not doing enough to protect workers. They kind of, I can't say, yeah, maybe even stuck, you know, in it, yeah, the trade unions are important and appropriate for representing workers' rights. But what have they done enough? And that is the question that's come up in the transport work sector as well. Have trade unions gone far enough to protect these workers, to understand issues of misclassification, informality? How do you kind of, how do you engage with the policy, with the policies in the policy space, to include this new category of workers, platform workers? And then my last sort of emerging issue is around platform cooperativism. And there have been experiments with alternative models of digital work that promote worker ownership and decent work. And that leads me to, I've been involved with a project, and it started out as a university project, the Digital Platform Cooperative Project. We identified, and we were working in the space, and it's a spin-off of the work we were doing. Jackie mentioned the Uber case in South Africa. And yes, we were involved with that Uber case. And we, that is what led us to the notion of, you know, just researching a model, an alternative model, because we can't turn our backs on tech. It's here to stay. It's very important. It shapes just every facet of our lives. So how could we, and by then, you know, by 2018, we'd begun to see all the challenges faced by platform workers, many of which Jackie has outlined in her input. And we sought to develop an alternative model. We set out to work with a group of domestic workers in the country in 2 of the key economics areas.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Can I carry on?
Please carry on.
Okay. So we set the Digital Platform Cooperative Project as a research project, then set out to establish, co-create with domestic workers an alternative platform. And yes, it was very ambitious. The research project gave rise to a community of practice of domestic workers who formed WeCare as an alternative model. So based on the research that we did, we gave rise to an alternative that still needs lots and lots of work. In the last year, WeCare was transitioning from a research project to a social enterprise. And we've got an amazing group of domestic workers who are completely online. They have been engaged in skills development. For the last 4 years, they've been engaged online in education and skills development around platforms, understanding what digital skills, understanding different types of social enterprises. And it is based on the 7 cooperative principles. But because of the legislation being so tedious in South Africa, it was agreed that they would form a voluntary association because that is the easiest legal form for workers to manage an enterprise by themselves. It needs lots more support. And as I said, the research needs to be interdisciplinary. And so the support we provide to workers on the ground has to be collaborative, interdisciplinary, and it cannot be university-based, and we understand that, and the workers understand that as well. But how do you release this project into the big and into the big world out there, where workers are in a position to manage, to run the enterprise on their own. And that is going to require a lot more support. More about that at another point in time. But yes, we have successfully created a community of practice of domestic workers that we would be happy to share with whoever is interested in supporting the process further. So I will leave it at that. Thank you very much for giving me the space to share.
Thank you, Fairuz, for your intervention. I'm particularly interested in when you say, is it time for us to demand a change for trade unions? Should they change their strategies? And that is very important because Agnes is here, who is an Uber driver, and she's part of the Transport and Allied Workers Union in Kenya. She demanded that they must have a women's desk in the transport union for them to be able to mobilize workers to be able to join the union. And for me, those are very important things that should be happening, because most unions, besides like beyond the neoliberal era, they're very dogmatic, they're very male-centered, they're very patriarchal.
Absolutely.
And so it's very important for us to even rethink as we're weaving this issue, when we're thinking of what do trade unions look like, because one of the other reasons that the data labelers are a bit hesitant to join a trade union is because they're like, we do not have money to be able to pay union dues. How will the union work? So we really must think about how unions are working, or what they should look like, how the organizing should be. And so I'll just hand it over to Agnes. And kindly, if your mic is not on mute, kindly mute it. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Agnes Mwongera from Kenya. I'm a member of Transport Workers Union, Kenya. And also I'm an online driver, the likes of Uber. We have different app companies in Kenya. So I work for different app companies. I'm also the women representative at the ITF National Coordinating Committee, and basically the president of the Women ITF NCC Women Committee Kenya. Now, when I talk about the Women Committee, I champion for the rights of women, especially those in the transport sector, the likes of aviation, shipping, long distance truck drivers, the public service vehicles. We have drivers, we have those who sell the tickets, we have the railway workers, we have the motorcycle riders. Now, being an online driver and a cab driver, and being the representative of the women in Kenya, under the umbrella of the ITF, and also in my union, the Transport Workers Union, I've championed for the women desk in every union, and I've made sure I visit the unions, the different transport workers unions, to make sure that the rights of the women in this country are heard. And we have, when you visit a union, you have a lady whom you can talk to, and we make sure that the report is given back to make sure that whatever has been reported, it has been thoroughly checked up on, and the lady or the victim is not left she's left contented that everything has been looked at. Now, being a driver, we have challenges in our country. Generally, as a driver, being a Kenyan platform economy transport worker, I have experienced a mix of reactions, both the challenges and also the opportunities. The app companies have helped me they have acted as a matchmaking channel for us to get the client, unlike there before, where we could just wait somewhere and wait for clients, which could lead to insecurity. We don't know about the client. We are not sure of the route that we are going to take, and we don't have somewhere to report in case something happened. That one has been a good thing for the apps to connect us with client, and also we are able to trace a client in some of the applications, not all. Also, it has acted as one of the income generating thing, where I can just start my work from anywhere. I can manage my own working time. It's one of the opportunities I have, but I have very many challenges. Now, what are the key issues am I facing as a driver? Low and unsafe pay rates. The pay rates are currently not sustainable, especially in our country. And I have to work many hours to make sure that I can get enough money to sustain myself, my family, and pay my bills. And also to make sure that my vehicle is okay to take the rides. Because you remember, like for example, Uber, they always check on the year of manufacture and make sure that we get verification and go for inspections to make sure that our vehicles are okay. So the rates are currently low, and we are looking at, we are finding that most of the drivers are working extra. They are not even sleeping at their homes to make sure they make the ends meet. So they have to work for many hours, and this one has led to many accidents, because if you work for many hours, you not even concentrate. Okay, absence of grievances handling machineries. The app companies terms us as independent contractors. So when you go to the app companies and you have an issue, they'll first listen to the client and they'll not listen to the driver. The government also, in Kenya, we signed a memorandum of understanding in 2018, but it has not been materialized, or nothing has worked with whatever we agreed with the government. So we don't have anywhere where we can run to. And being termed as an independent contractor and having the raw rates, paying rates, most of the drivers have not joined the workers' union. So we are trying to at least sensitize on how the importance of joining the workers' union, so that we can have our issues checked on, and we can have someone who can talk to the government about us. We have also the lack of legal recognition of digital taxi drivers as workers. We are not termed as workers. That's why we don't have leave pays. We are not paid any leave. For example, today, if I get ill and I don't work, that's to mean I don't have any pay at the end of the day. So you find that most drivers will even work when they are sick. They work continuously 365 days without any leave, without even taking a break. And that one is posing as an issue in our country. Absence of, I've talked about the absence of grievances during machinery, but in that we have organized ourselves in different groups. For example, in my union, I started a group called the TAU Divas. It's basically for the ladies in the union, those who have joined the union and those who are in the transport sector. We talk about what we are going through in our workplace. And also when we have issues, we can try and raise concerned to different authorities. And this one has really helped us. So having, now that we don't have people who recognize us, we have tried to create groups that can help us push our agendas. And also the credit societies where our drivers, the little pay that they can get, they are able to save, because most of them will not go, they don't have bank accounts. And the ones that have bank accounts, they use the bank accounts to get loans, to buy vehicles or to sustain their families, which is acting or posing as a risk because most of the vehicles are being auctioned. If you don't pay the vehicles, maybe you're using you've leased the vehicle, you have to pay for that vehicle, to use that vehicle. If you don't pay, either the owner will pick the vehicle or the bank will come and auction the vehicles. So what can we do? We have the credit societies where if, for example, I've earned a little amount today, I'm able to save the little money somewhere, and maybe I'm able to get vehicles and or use the money that I get, the savings, the little savings, to acquire loans and to acquire something else. Now, as a lady driver, I have very many challenges that I face during my workplaces, my working time. The first one, the low pay. Even if I work at night, there are no app companies that will look at the risk that I go through. So they will make sure I get the same amount as any other driver, either male comrade or anyone else. The harassment by clients, sexual harassment, which has led to us championing for ratification of Convention 190. And I'm happy because during the Labor Day, our president insisted that this should be ratified very soon. So we hope that with that directive from the president, the ratification, the Convention C190 will be ratified in my country, and that one will help us, especially when we have issues about sexual harassment and what have you. And having cases of sexual harassment from different drivers, that we don't have lack of enough data from the app companies to enable the police to have proper investigations. So we are forced to either install dashboard cameras, which is a bit expensive for some of the drivers, and also have some recording. You can imagine you're driving and at the same time, you're supposed to record any conversation that you have with the client if you feel offended. So that one is not the best way to work. Now, how am I taking part in the organizing of the women in my country, especially the Transport Workers Union? I've talked about the credit societies as form of social solidarity and to help each other during the times of need. Also, we have groups like the one that I've talked about, the TAU Divas, and also I've insisted and asked my fellow drivers to at least join the Workers Union. For example, in my union, the Transport Workers Union, it's trained a central role in addressing issues like police harassment, deactivations, and also free legal support. We get free legal support from unions. Are there new forms of organizing and resistance? Yes. We have joined, we have different social platforms from Facebook, WhatsApp. We have created some apps like Zero, where we communicate while working. Zero is something like radio channel. When I'm working, I'm able to talk to different people, talk about what I'm going through. If I have a case, if I have maybe the route the trip that I've been given, if the route is not safe for me, I'll just communicate, and the other drivers use the channel to follow up if in case of anything. And there are other options of female drivers, for example, working with female app companies. Like in my country, we have categories of women where as a lady driver, I can only pick lady clients. And we have app companies that are basically for women to women drivers to women riders. For example, in my country, we have an app company called Anisa. So those are some of the things that we are doing as drivers. And we are also having channels, and also having the women desks in our unions has really played a major role in helping in all the challenges that we are facing. Also having interactions with different drivers, different community, different associations in the driver groups has really brought good results in whatever we are doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Agnes. Thank you for your intervention. And I think you're one of the people who have really challenged the unions, not only in terms of how they operate, but how they incorporate women. The fact that the TAWU has a women's desk, and you know, in Kenya, like the transport sector is very, very male dominated. It's very difficult. And also that's the irony, because it's only because of these platforms, the big tech platforms, that women were able to, again, to be incorporated into the transport system. And it also offers some level of safety. As you say, they can be able to record, they can be able to now connect to clients. That gatekeeping aspect that existed prior to this existence of platform now has collapsed. And so women are able to join this workforce. But then again, at what cost? Because their security, the infrastructure of the city, again, is very hostile. There's no place when you're menstruating. How do you operate? You know, the challenges still become, women still become a very vulnerable group, and it becomes very difficult to incorporate them. But also another group of tech workers very active in Kenya is the content moderators. And for that, I'll invite Kauna to give her intervention. She's been a content moderator in Kenya, and she'll introduce herself and her intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela, and also to the previous speaker, Agnes, which have highlighted, I think, some of the issues. My name is Kauna Malgwi. I'm a former Facebook content moderator. I'm clinical psychologist in training, and I'm also of the African Content Moderators Union, which I'm heading the Nigerian chapter. Yeah, I have so many hats, but yeah, all in the same space. And I'm happy to be here and also to share some of the experiences that we face as content moderators. So I know the time is limited, but I'll try as much as possible to just go to the main point. So the work of a content moderator is reviewing and also just filtering all the toxic contents or unwanted contents on the social media platforms. And so far we have so many social media platforms that content moderation is being done. We have TikTok, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, Snapchat, and a whole lot more. And this kind of work comes with a lot of mental health challenges, the pay, and a whole lot of terrible working condition, I would say. And just to dive into the processes where they hire, I think the main challenge is the lack of transparency in hiring, where you are being told you'll be a customer care agent, you'll be a translator. So they have so many names they give to the job. And unfortunately, immediately you're given contracts, everything happens so fast. So you're even made to sign your contracts and everything before even the first day at work. And immediately you come to the working environment 2-3 days after or less. Sometimes you're just given a non-disclosure agreement to sign, which takes away all your right to be able to disclose exactly what you're doing. And from there, of course, the training is usually 2 weeks, 3 weeks max. So you can imagine all the Facebook contents and community standards that you see even on your side as a user. So as a content moderator, you have to go through all the community standards, and like we call them the policies. You have to go through all the policies, and you don't write, you don't record, you're just there listening back to back for 8 hours, just 1 hour break. That's during the, and most of the contents are being blurred, so you can't even really understand the gravity or the intensity of what you're getting yourself into. We all know, you can imagine the worst content you've ever seen on internet, maybe TikTok, Facebook. Just imagine the worst content you've seen. And this is the contents that we action every 50 seconds. So we have a matrix. So in every 50 seconds, you must submit a job that's a reported content. And you can only imagine the pressure. Sometimes it's a video, it can be a live video. So I would not like to share most graphic, but just to give an example, so I'll just give a disclaimer. So it can be committing suicide, the live stream. So you have to watch it. You have to watch it, and then because the policies have hierarchies, we call them hierarchy. So nudity has higher hierarchy than, let's say, a human innards. So you have to, even if someone had an accident or committed suicide, whatever it is, and you could see other of their maybe broken brains out, whatever it is, you have to zoom in and see if there's any private, any of their genitals that are out. So this has put workers on the very very unhuman conditions, because then you have to deal with the time, because you have 50 seconds. If not, you would be punished for that. You have to also be in a working environment where it's toxic, because there's no seniority. So someone who is a high schooler, someone who has a bachelor's degree, they all earn the same. So there's a lot of competition, because of course, in content moderation, there's no opportunity for career growth. So once you're hired as a moderator, chances are for the next 4 or 5 years, you'll continue to be a moderator, regardless of how good you perform, because there are no opportunities for the workers to get growth, and hence it creates a lot of toxicity, and they find a lot of harassment, especially gender specific harassment, such as women going through a lot, because if you want to get promoted or you've met the criteria of being promoted, now even the managers can start throwing advances at you, for you to, like, trying to tell you, if we do this, you can be able to get promoted. And that created a lot of toxicity in the workspace. And talk about the payment, we're being paid less than $2 per hour. So less than $2 per hour, that's even before tax. So by the time it's taxed, and then there's a lot of expatriates. I myself, I'm a Nigerian, so I came to Kenya and I got the work of moderation. So you can imagine amount means, because now you have to send money home, you have to take care of yourself and all that. So the pay was really, really low. And even for the Kenyans was lower than even the expatriates. So if an expatriate is getting 60,000 before tax, a Kenyan is getting 40,000 before tax. So you can do the maths. So you can see even the disparity in the pay, because we know that content moderation in other parts of the world, from the global south, you can see that workers get paid from $20 per hour, and here we are doing the same job, in fact doing more job than they do, because we realized, especially during COVID, during the lockdown, guys were not doing graphic contents, suicide contents, but we were made to do suicide contents during the COVID period, because of course, people were working from home. So we moved to a hotel, and then we're kept there and we're made to do the job. So you can see the gravity and also the harm that has been caused on these workers. And most of the time, even for the Kenyans, you hear the managers will say, you are easily replaceable. We can get a lot of Kenyans looking for a job. So it always puts the workers under consistent fear of losing their jobs, and also do I survive after losing the job, most especially during the COVID period, because we all know how things went. Talking about unionizing, it was a bit difficult. Not a bit, it was really, really difficult to unionize and come together, because in 2019, with Daniel Mutang, if anyone who know, some people might have read or heard of Daniel, we tried to unionize and it got busted. We brought armed men to the office. It's either you go back into work or you go out, and we lost some of our colleagues in that process. They were fired, and for the other colleagues, they were made to sign, okay, I will not join any union again and all that. And fast forward to 2023, where the whole project was declared redundant. The project was declared redundant in January. Meanwhile, another company here in Kenya was still hiring for the same position, the same number of workers. And we applied even before that, not even knowing that it was our job that was taken to the other company. And we're told, if you're from Sama, we were told not to hire you. That's the client's requirement, which is Facebook. So that led us now to the courts. And right now, as we speak, it's been over 2 years. We've been in court with Facebook, Sama, our employer, and even Teleperformance, which is formerly Majorel. And yeah, we could see that there's a whole drama around jurisdiction, because they said they're not in Kenya, they never hired us. We're hired via an outsourcing company. And when Madam Fairuz was speaking about now the issue of outsourcing in Africa, it's really, really problematic, because this is the way for these big tech companies to really avoid responsibility and accountability. Because when we did the job, we've never done any single work for Sama. That's what I was saying. We've never done any single work for Sama. Immediately we go to work, we log into our Facebook accounts, and then we start working on their reported contents. If Facebook's portal or internet, whatever, goes down, we are jobless the whole day. Sometimes we'll just be asked, okay, this will take a long time for Facebook to fix it, so you guys can just relax and hang around and all that. So it really pains them that, yeah, we worked for them, but now when it comes to the contracts, the pay and whatever, it was handled by Sama. So we can see the complexity. And just to speak about for the past 2 years, because you've not been able now to move on, because when you have such issues, because you've not okay, let me speak about even the redundancy package. The redundancy package was $400, not up to $400, around $300 and something per year that you've worked for Sama. So for me, I worked for 4 years, so you can do the maths. It's less than $1,500 for the whole 4 years that I've worked. And for the mental health care, it was almost to zero. It was like nothing to zero. When we sued them, so we were not able to sign out and all that, so we weren't even paid this amount that we've been talked about. So they will tell you, once you receive that amount, you sign off your rights that you will never sue Sama.
Are you there, Kauna?
It looks like her internet.
Yeah.
Maybe just give it a minute. We see if she'll come back. If not, then we can move to the next person.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me?
Perfect. Yeah.
Angela,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Sorry,
you.
we had an electricity blackout, so about that. So I had to switch to my phone internet. Yeah, so you can imagine the the very terrible situation that workers were placed immediately after the redundancy, because now you don't have a pay, you apply for jobs and they will be like, oh, you are the ones who sued your employer. No, we don't want anything to do with you. Oh, you worked for summer. We are those people. So we are being termed in such a way that it's even difficult to really move on. And even the issue of the mental health are things that people don't see, because you can see someone beautifully dressed, no arm lost, because if it's a physical injury, you'll see maybe there's a bandage on the arm. So you can easily say, oh, I'm sorry, you're going through something, you know, oh, yeah. So you'll be so kind. But for mental health, it's usually not something you can see, and hence workers really go through the worst. And also the stigma around mental health. We all know that the moderators who Sutsa had a mental health evaluation, and all of us had PTSD among other mental health issues. And there's no form of care as we speak. Nothing is around for these workers. It's been over 2 years, and workers are really, really struggling. When I mean really struggling, it's bad. And we know that mental health issues, because of the contents that people have watched, we've had colleagues who have attempted suicide and all that. And also the society is not kind to people who are going through mental health issues. I know that even for me, I'll give an example. In Nigeria, as the African Content Moderators Union, we try to see how we can get help, and we did our best. We got funding, and we met with the wrong people, and we couldn't even get the help that we would need with that. So it's a very sad thing that even though people come to workers and be like, oh, we are going to help you, you know, we understand your situation, but then try to exploit you at the same time. So your workers are being placed because now you don't have anyone who really is there genuinely most of the times, to say that, okay, I'm here to assist the workers and my best is the best interest of the workers. So the space of content moderation has really evolved, because we can see even with Facebook getting rid of fact checkers and all that because of the whole issues. But then the workers who did the work before and who are still doing it, no one is speaking about how best they can be taken care of. And part of the intervention we've done, when we tried to register our union in Kenya, it wasn't, we were told to join an existing union, which we joined the Communications Workers Union in affiliation with Uniglobal Union in Switzerland, and we're able to get a local agreement with Teleperformance right now to unionize the workers, which some of their workers are content moderators. So it's a win, but then it's a work in progress, and there's a whole lot, because even if you tell your workers, oh, you now in a union, the workers still feel it's not really genuine for me to join. It can be a trap that, okay, you're part of those people joining the union. So we are, fingers crossed, we are still speaking to workers to see how we can unionize them, but the fear is still there of losing the jobs and not really being clear on their contracts that they can join a union without getting any form of punishment, or stylishly using that to get back to them. And in Nigeria, we're still in the process of finding our feet because of the incidences we've had. But I would say all through, workers are really, regardless of which, we've seen even the Ghana workers, content moderators. I've spoken to a lot of them as well. And you see the issues are, if not exactly the same, they are usually similar in all the issues that I've spoken about. They are really similar, and workers are 100% in fear while doing the job, and even after you've left the job, because after there's a lot of fear. I've signed a non-disclosure agreement. I can be sued. and a lot of threats that may come even from the employer. You remember you signed a non-disclosure agreement, so you can't even try to fight back. Yeah, the legal routes of fighting the injustices and the exploitations are there, but we all know that it takes a lot of time, because as the Kenyan case have shown us, it's been over 2 years. March was 2 years, so we're in May. It's been over 2 years. We're still in jurisdiction. They are pushing to go to the Supreme Court. So what is the fate of the workers? So that is it from me. And I think it's also a wake-up call for all of us that is on this call. If you see a content moderator, if you see a tech worker, please hug them well, because those guys are really doing the most. It's just like the doctors, the army, who go out there to fight for us, to keep us safe. This is what we do. We kept you all safe on the social media platforms and even outside of those platforms, because we've escalated ISIS plans of terrorism attacks, children being molested or groomed online, and a whole lot that would have happened, that due to the work of these invisible workers, they were able to keep each and one of us safe in one way or the other. So thank you, and I want to thank Nawi also for always giving us this space to speak. They've been amazing people who have held our hands through the toughest times. So I cannot say but thank you to Joey and their team.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kauna. I think that intervention just raised the question of what does a structure of care look like for tech workers. So as we're thinking of a feminist labor future, care is something that we must really integrate into it and think of what care should look like for the tech workers. And I won't take much more time. We're running out of time. I'll invite Joan, who is the president of the Data Labelers Association in Kenya, to give her intervention.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm Joan Kinyua. The president of I'm the president of Data Labelers Association, and I've been in the AI field since 2017. And what that means is basically any artificial intelligence advancement that you're seeing out there, we have probably worked on them. From the self-driving cars to the drones that you're seeing, to the vacuum robots, to the robots serving you in the hotel industry, all those projects we have played a role one way or another. So data labeling and data annotation is the backbone to artificial intelligence, but we are so sad because nobody knows if there are people who are behind all these technological advancements. So when the reason as to why we formed Data Labelers Association, we have 10 core members, is because of the challenges we faced when we're working on these platforms and still BPOs. Personally, I have worked from BPO. I have been employed by a BPO and then transitioned to doing platform jobs. So I will start with the process of being recruited by the BPO, for example. You get a link from someone. They usually advertise the jobs from inside. You get a link from someone, and then you are supposed to go to the next slum. As to why they choose a slum for you to do the training, I don't know. And when you're working on this, when you're training, you're usually in your hundreds, or like a number, usually in your hundreds. And when you get the jobs, when you get the job, only one of you or two of you from that 100 is going to get the job. So that leaves a vacuum. So every time when you're working, you're told, remember, you are among the few people who are picked. So that means there's a whole 98 other people who have the same skills that you instilled with. So even if there's something that is going on, or even if there's something that you feel it is not working for your favor, you can't speak up. So that is among the process of recruitment that really raises eyebrows and really intentional. So they know what they're doing. The big tech companies, the BPOs, all those people, they know what they're doing. Besides that, I also want to speak about the challenges that I faced when I was working as data labeler, both in a BPO setting and in platform work, which is one, pay. For example, as Kauna has stated it, there's usually pay discrimination. In summer, when content moderators were being paid 40,000 for maybe being a Kenyan, the same company data labelers are being paid and are like $200, and that $200 is not subject to tax. So that means it goes to less than maybe it goes to maybe $150, and that person is supposed to use that money for fare. That person is supposed to sustain themselves. Like that person's like that $150 is supposed to sustain them for a whole month before they get their another pay. So there, when we speak about pay, it's the regional pay disparity where you find Africa or Kenya are being paid least when you compare to other regions. For example, you get to the Philippines and they're being paid $20 per hour, and when you go to the US, they're being paid $40 to $60 per hour for the same work we are doing. So yeah, and when we are in this space, in the BPO, this space, your leaves are being dictated to you. Like you can't have today you can't. Oh, someone. Okay, so what data labeling do is, I'm sorry, I did not explain what data labelers do is. For example, I usually start from far, because when I start getting into it, people will not understand. So you see the self-driving cars that you're seeing on the road, they have to recognize specific things. For example, like there's a road marking on the front, there are people crossing, there's a bump, you have to take a corner. So all those things, the self-driving cars has to be taught. And how to be taught is by you giving that data, and then you're giving instructions on different ways you're supposed to work on that task. So for example, you're given a road setting where there are people standing, and there are different road signs and road markings and pylons and like all those things that are on the road, and 100 meters on the left and 100 meters on the right, and all those things you have to annotate, or you draw boxes, and you tell the self-driving car, or the self-driving car, that this is a person, this is a child, this is a pet, and this is a road, and the road has road markings and all those things. I'm sorry, that had slipped my mind. So that is what data labeling is, and it's not limited to only self-driving cars. We have the vacuum robots. Usually it's called the Roomba. I don't know even if it is in Kenya, but it collects the dirt from the floor where you have like different things on the floor, but it detects what to get in and what not to. Like if there's a toy on the floor, and it just bypasses the toy, because it has been taught like that. This is what you're supposed to get, and this is what you're supposed to ignore. So again, that is among one of the projects that we have worked on. Another project that we have worked on is, at times we are given scans, and we are not even trained medicine, or we do not have any certification or any training on medicines and stuff like that. But you're given scans, you're given mammograms, you're given all those things to teach AI how to know the trends that are happening. For example, it knows. I don't know if you guys have read about. They're saying now you can know if you're going to have breast cancer 5 years before. It's because they have, like, there's this. You're given a whole lot of scans, mammograms, and all that, and then there's trends that the doctors are trying to point out, and then now those trends, we are given these things to annotate like from when the cells are starting to form, the size of the tumor, all the nitty-gritties when it comes to uh, breast cancer and all those things. So again, we have other projects where you're given a dead body there, and some pathologist somewhere wants to come up with an application that's supposed to do faster, what do you call the postmortems. So you're supposed to zoom in on the kind of wounds or the Usually they are wounds, because this is specifically tailored for wounds. There's a stab wound, you have to draw a box around the stab. If there's a bullet, you have to draw a box or a polygon around the injury that caused the harm. So again, this is again for all the technological advancements that you're seeing out there. So you can imagine the challenges that people are facing, from being paid 0.00 something dollars for such tasks, which is very bad. And from the mental health aspect of these things. So you have a project which you're not even prepared for. You're not even given a warning, this is what you're going to be working on next. To like, when you're not working on it, that means you do not have a source of living. So that means you're not going to earn anything, and you have a family to feed, you have your own staff, you have. And mind you, I think I forgot to mention that these companies are not paying your internet, and they're not providing your laptops, and you have to have the highest functioning machines. So that means you have to have a machine that is worth over around 50,000 Kenya shillings. And your internet speed has to be very high for you to perform in these tasks. And that is a requirement when you start working on this platform. You have to provide your internet speed. You have to show the specifications of your machine, and nobody's paying for that. When we're working on these projects, we are told to install these monitoring applications on our machines, where when you're working, these people on the other side are getting your data, regardless when your family is there or when your babies are there. So that means there's no even protection for family. Like, you do not have any privacy even in your own home. You cannot, like, you share so much information, which again, we are coming to realize that this data, your personal data, is being used by them without your knowledge, and you're also giving your hard-earned work to them. Again, like, they're benefiting in both ways, right? So again, another challenge that I think has been spoken about is the
You're muted, John.
I'm sorry. When you speak about skilling, I have been in this space for more than 5 years, right? But I cannot get another job anywhere else. Why? Because I'm used to drawing boxes, polygons, and all those shapes in vehicles and in people and in dead bodies and in all those things. Where am I going to take these skills? In case, like, for example, you do not have another annotating jobs, and these people are giving you piecework jobs, like, it's a task, you cannot get like the full picture of what you're doing or what the end product is. It's just piecework, and you're given like the basic trainings, even if the training is supposed to be about data analyst and all those jobs. Like, it's so basic, it's not going to help you in anywhere. Why don't these companies invest in giving you like a full training and then utilize the skills in the projects that they're giving you, right? And I think when we were working in these projects, there's a lot of non-sensitization of things. So I worked without a contract. I've worked in a contract that is written in two words, and I've worked in a space where I've been given a contract with so many law jargons. I don't even understand what I'm paying. I'm being told. And I've also been given a contract where I'm supposed to sign without even reading what the content of the contract is. So again, the precarity of the contract, as Angela said, is very common in this space. We do not have any social protection despite working on these platforms for all our lives. There's nothing, like, you're not paying for anything. You're not, like, you do not have a future. Everything is bleak on your side. You just paid your 0.00 something dollars, and then everything is left up to you. Nobody's looking about your occupational health. And mind you, these people have timers in the platforms you're working for. At times, you're even given some specific time to work on these tasks. But when it comes to you getting hurt when you're working on this project, they claim they cannot like make up, like, they cannot substantiate the fact that you've worked on that platform for while you and got that injury. But when they look at the hours that you've put in their platforms, it is like very relevant, because most of us work for 18 to 20 hours a day, so that we can make anything that makes sense, right? And I don't know even if you guys notice that there's an erosion of our culture, which is very intentional. There's this project that you work on where you're told to put the standard of beauty. You're given even if you go to Google at this moment and just check who, like the most beautiful lady, you will not find a black face. It's because you're given these projects to work on where you're supposed to, like, this is a fair lady, this is a blonde lady with blue eyes and a very pointy nose and arched cheeks and stuff like that. That is very imposed beauty. Yeah, so that, which leads to an erosion of our culture where we are like setting our beauty standards according to other people's eyes, and we are also like our like we are slowly gelling in into the westernization of things instead of adopting and like going on with whatever it is with Africanization of things, which I think is very beautiful and stuff like that. But we are slowly gelling in into things that are not ours, and I don't know. Yeah. So I think my intervention I think is policy and regulation, which I think we are really lacking in this space. There's nothing to build on. There is no policy that protects data workers, and even if there's a data Data Protection Act here in Kenya, I don't know if they know we even give photos of our children as to get money, and we did not even know that was illegal. So I think policy and regulation needs to be created and instilled, and even if it means being enforced, it really needs to be done. So again, another thing I also wanted to highlight as my intervention is, apart from unions, let's also empower other worker-led organizations and see how effective they can be. Because at the moment, the unions do not relate with the current form of work. Yeah. So I also think we can also come up with an African market rate, which is standardized. So when these platform jobs are given here in Kenya, you can come up, like, there's this standard rate that is acceptable, even if when you're speaking about the ILO convention and stuff like that, we need to have that clearly stated somewhere. Like, this has come up because we've checked on the standard of livings, the kind of work and all those things, and then we have come up with a standardized market rate. Yeah. And also, we need these jobs recognized, as Agnes has said. When we recognize these jobs, there's going to be like the like everything is going to align, because there's going to come, like, we have I've lost words, but like when we make these jobs to be even recognized, there's infrastructure, a clear infrastructure of how things are supposed to flow and everything else. So I think that was my contribution for today. I hope. Yeah.
Thank you, Joan. It was a very, very beautiful contribution, especially when you raise the issue of the erasure of indigenous knowledge, the indigenous knowledge systems. I feel as though it's very systemic. It's also very intentional. And the fact that you guys are also very invisibilized is very intentional, because AI looks very shiny. People do not know that people are actually working on polygons and boxes all day behind the scenes, and yet they're being surveilled. You have to install a certain software on your machine to be able to do that work. So one, that can ensure that it's you who's working on it, and two, they are seeing everything you do the whole day from morning until evening. They see your child passing by the background, they see your house, they see your conditions, because also the one thing that they say is that you must come from a slum for them to recruit you. So it's the dehumanization of AI, and also the role of the state. I'm seeing some of the comments when people are saying how disgusting it is to see politicians walking around, and how they are also really saying this idea of Silicon Savannah, they're selling it, and that is what African labor should look like. Kenya is ripe for investment and all those things, and without really centering the people of Kenya and the people of Africa actually who are coming to Kenya, which actually now looks like a slave port, quite literally. Anyway, I will not take much longer. I'll invite the last speaker, Ama, to give her intervention.
Hi, it's lovely to be invited to speak. I hope everyone can hear me. Yes?
Yes,
okay,
we can.
excellent. Yeah. So thank you so much, Now We Collective, for inviting me and for having me to come and share with you guys my perspective. My name is Elom Ama Governor Ababio. I am an African living in Ghana, and I've worked as a content creator in the digital space for 7 years now, since I was 19. And since I was in second year in law school, that's when I started, because when I got to university, that's the first time that our parents handed us like a digital device, which was a phone. And then I saw the social media platforms and how people were sharing content, and just really sharing about everything and empowering, from natural hair to makeup tutorials to how to cook, especially on YouTube. So for the last 7 years, I have worked as a YouTuber. I've worked as a social media influencer on TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter as well, except Facebook. And I've been able to progressively grow significant following on these platforms. But apart from these caps, and I would mention my other caps just because they really do come in handy when I'm talking about like the challenges and how they really became intertwined. So I also now I'm a lawyer, but as I mentioned, I started YouTube and content creation when I was in law school in second year when I was 19. So I was supposed to be a lawyer 2 years ago. And as a result of the challenges of engaging as a worker with the digital space, my call to the bar was delayed for 2 years. And then I got called last year. So now I'm a lawyer, but also I run a swimming school. I've run a swimming school since I was 18, since I first got into law school. I started a swimming school. We've expanded, and now we have only female instructors, empowering other young women to take up skills. So we teach the skill of, if you don't know how to swim, we teach you how to swim, and then we teach you how to teach. And that's kind of what we've been doing with the swimming school. And now, most recently, I work as a Pan-Africanist revolutionary organizer on the continent. And this latest career path came to me as a result of the challenges from the digital space. So yeah, generally as an African content creator who happens to be, and these are key, so let's note that, like, who happens to be an openly queer woman living in Ghana all my life, and particularly as someone who works on the continent, I've definitely come to understand the digital space and digital work not just as, a new frontier. I've definitely come to see it as a place where old inequalities are reproduced in new and recently, and more we're seeing completely invisible ways. It's like that happens to us, we feel the effect, and then we were like, oh wow, these inequalities have moved from the physical space to the digital space very much so. So I'll just talk briefly about what's like, my digital workplace looks like. I'm sure you're familiar. If you have any content creation friends, content creator friends, or that you've even engaged in content creation yourself, or that you watch them online, you would know that, it's often maybe in someone's bedroom, you use a phone, unstable Wi-Fi network. And I'm describing what the workplace looks like. It does tend to be borderless, but not classless. It does tend to be flexible, but it's not totally lacking structure, although that structure is not transparent at all. And we'll get into that a little bit. And oftentimes when we work in isolation, yet remain constantly visible, performing both labor and self online. So for African content creators, particularly women and queer folks like myself, the digital space for us is not just, we don't just see it as global, it's definitely racialized. And systematically so, we'll get into that, but it's definitely racialized, it's definitely gendered, it's definitely classed, and it's definitely economically stratified, I would say, right? We're expected to produce global standard content without any global standard support, infrastructure, or any type of income to support the work that we do. These digital workplaces have also become evidence hubs, okay? And let me just start off. This is what I'm really going to be getting into to kind of delve into like the challenges and how they had a trickle-down effect, a culminating effect into the life that I live now and the conditions under which I work now as the girl I am living in Ghana. So these, you've probably heard of the phrase, the internet doesn't forget and all of that. And when you probably heard of that phrase before, you probably thought of it when maybe in the past, people's nudes, for instance, would have leaked, or people would have leaked other people's nudes without consent, or that maybe you're doing something illegal. And so there's like evidence of you doing the illegality. And so that could be used against you, and you could suffer criminal repercussions and all of that. That's what you generally think of. But for particularly women, and queer folks who are openly queer folks living on the continent, we've seen that the digital space and us openly, voluntarily engaging in work with the digital space, producing our content, hours of editing, production, ideation of what we're going to do, like the outfit for it, all of that is like self-funded, by the way. The hair you do, everything you do, the idea and all of that, you do that, and then you put that out there, and now the product or the finished product, the content that you put out there becomes weaponized against you because you're a woman and because of the content that you create, which is just by virtue of the fact that you're a woman. And I'll get into it. So what kind of content was I creating online? And I told you, I mentioned all these platforms, and I've been doing this for like almost 8 years now. So you can imagine that we're talking about, like, honestly, I could say easily thousands of videos and content that I'll put out there, including tweets and all of that, right? And I would say, before I even get into it, that it started off with me just being like my authentic self. And then people realized that what I would put out was kind of, I guess they would deem radical and politicized in a way, without me even trying to be political. And then that's how I kind of transitioned into being a full-time activist as well. So there's all that, and kind of how my pre-activism and post-activism on the digital space and the challenges like that both came with it, kind of joined forces to attempt to destroy me by my 6th year, when I was supposed to be called to the bar in a different career path. And how it kind of, even though that it's weirdly enough, oh no, sorry, you guys can hear that noise, right? Can you guys hear noise in the background?
No,
Okay.
no.
There's like, sorry, there's noise. There's some work going on in the house. I'm so sorry. MFR, please, like, is it going to be going on the whole time? Oh, I can't go outside and have a meeting. MFR, please, can you just talk to them? I have like 10 minutes to do this, please. 10 minutes. 10 minutes, yes, please. Please forgive me for that. Again, lost my train of thoughts, Natalie, but okay, let me just go into it. What was I doing? So a lot of feminism content that I didn't even know about, because again, I started from when I was really young. So just me being like, I guess people do say I'm assertive, I'm bold. Later, as I would grow up, like, I became properly feminist, properly liberated in every sense of the word. I would create content highlighting sexual reproductive health and rights and education, talking about my IUD journey, talking about, because when I started, I'm a very transparent person. That was also kind of the hallmark of my content creation journey, right? And I didn't even know that I was so transparent and so honest until like it yielded fruits, and like, my community online would grow and things like that, and they would keep talking about it. How transparent I was. And so like I would obviously talk about and empower women. I am openly polyamorous. So I would also talk about this. I'm openly queer, and throughout my journey, I would talk about this freely. I would empower other queer people in Ghana. And mind you, all of the things that I was putting, naturally, because I was in law school and I was literally studying the law throughout this social media career, I was using that to tick my life, right? To determine, okay, what is illegal? What do you not say? What do you say? So I can tell you for a fact, if anyone is thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't have been doing this, I can tell you for a fact that nothing I ever did or put out was illegal, right? And everything that has been said about it has been like from this weird, obscure standard, morality standard that no one really understands, really bad from like the religious aspect, because that's something that is heavily here in Ghana. But like, this is the kind of work I would do, right? And also I was super, super transparent. And this is where the classed part comes for me, because I was super transparent about my real life circumstances. Like I'm properly in the proletariat class. My entire family is in the proletariat class. And so about my transport situation and being a law student, there's a whole thing about that if I don't go into, it may not like sit well. And let me just say that I'm going to mention these particular things, having in mind that, of course, all of the conversations we've been having, it's like perhaps my situation was just too peculiar, and there was just so many things about my particular situation and why I ended up with the challenges I ended up with engaging in the digital space. But also, like, for me, I think even though it's so different, it really does outline the misogyny of it all. It really does outline like the patriarchal system. It really does outline like the political class and how they treated me, because I'm talking about, guys, all of this journey ended me up in jail for 17 days at one point. Yes, type of thing I'm talking about, apart from being delayed in being called to the bar for 2 years. As if that wasn't enough, there was like a lot of online bullying. So essentially, all of this time when I was on social media creating all the content, there was nothing from the legal regulators. There was nothing from the General Legal Council, which are the regulators of the legal profession, saying that, oh, you law students, you're not doing this right. Nothing. And I had not breached any laws, any rules, no stuff laws, stuff rules, school rules, nothing. I was always in the proper attire, everything, right? 5 days to my call to the bar, an anonymous, a fake petitioner, because they gave fake details, had petitioned the regulators to say that I was not fit to be called to the bar because of content that I would put on my social media, and because I was openly queer as well, and because of my activism in support of the rights of the sexual minority in Ghana. So these were literally, they didn't mention anything illegal. They didn't mention anything that showed that I had broken any laws, but somehow that petition was able to keep me from becoming a lawyer and working and so on, as I had worked for it the whole time. And mind you, this is critical because I also had no support as somebody who was with different jobs, like on the digital platform. Why? Because from the online harassment and the media in Ghana, oh my God, completely destroying my name, like putting videos out of context and things like that. People intentionally would not patronize my swimming school. Okay. And then also on social media, advertisers in Ghana, because on digital platform, that's another way in which we monetize, not just the platforms paying, right? But also like a brand will contact you to do some type of work for them, advertisement work, bring visibility on some product or service they do, and then they pay you for it. Now, what would happen is that you are blacklisted on a lot of different advertisement agencies, right? Ad agencies. And so they are not recommending you to other brands and so on and so forth. And then there's the major thing that we've all been talking about, and that's why I kept it last. Like on YouTube, I hope you guys are, okay, I don't know if you're familiar with how we get paid on YouTube by YouTube, right? So there's something they call the CPM, the cost per mil. That's how much advertisers are willing to pay you per every 1,000 views. Guys, content creators outside of Africa, whose audiences are outside of Africa, or even content creators in Africa whose audiences are outside of Africa, tend to have a higher CPM because the CPM in those countries are higher. So that if, for instance, this person sitting in Alabama or whatever the case is with their audience is making 1,000 views, it's making like $1,000 from like 20,000 views. I have literally I'm not talking hypothetically, I've had videos that were like 400,000 plus videos, right? And didn't get up to $400 for them, type of thing. Whereas like these other content creators would have like 20,000 views and would have, so there was no real support for the work that I did, and there was no real protection for the work that I did. In fact, the genesis of the problem starts with what Agnes and Joan have already mentioned, that there was no recognition of the work that I did for 7 years on social media as labor, right? For which then my labor rights then are kicked in, for which the whole thing is seen as, oh, She was engaged in labor. She was applying herself. Instead, because I'm a woman, because I wear piercings, because a lot of my politics is around like liberation of women and I dress as I like, and also because they're trying to, of course, box me in, because you see, that I think for me, what I realized in hindsight is the fight against everything I stood for was really like differently motivated, right? Because there was very much the class bit where it was like, no, a lawyer cannot be deemed to be taking the trotro, which is like the cheapest form of transport and kind of like is seen as degrading in a way, if you guys get me, right? So, and then I would openly be filming that's me doing all of those things, right? So it's like, I think for me, the understanding, wait, let me make sure that, oh, I should speak slower. Forgive me, please forgive me, please forgive me. I didn't even see that on, forgive me. And I'm trying to not like go over my 10 minutes, that's why. Okay, no, that's perfectly fine. I would just say that some of the struggles, for me, well, great. I've already mentioned my call to the bar and the monetization bits, and also the lack of transparency on the algorithm and the system running there. Like, what is needed? What do we need to do, right? We just engage with the platform and then we start working with the platform, and there's really no transparency in terms of regulation. As we've all been talking about, there are no general standards and no international standards that we're really like necessarily held to. There's been the convention since 2011 that has not been ratified by a lot, but by I think 14 is what Fairuz mentioned. And yeah, this has had a trickle-down effect in my other streams of income, because I'm a blacklisted lawyer as well, whereas like there have been so many law firms I would apply to with no success because of everything that has trickled down from this. Also, there was no legal support. But in terms of the solutions, really quickly, that not solutions necessarily, just I guess thoughts and considerations for us. Definitely, I know that there are like community-led, I don't want to even use unions and cooperative, but if, for instance, I could say social movements that perhaps just need to really be strengthened more, and kind of further rooted in like political consciousness, for us to really kind of realize how intertwined all of these facets are and how further marginalized other groups of people are in this same digital space, and the stratification of this marginalization really. I would also just, of course, everyone has already mentioned that like there has to be platform accountability and protection. I'll just leave it at that because I don't have enough time. And yeah, I've already also mentioned the legal recognition of our work as platform workers as a real job, as labor that needs to be accounted for and dealt with accordingly. Honestly, I'm really grateful for the time that I've gotten. I hope I didn't go too much past the 2 minutes. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think you've really highlighted the issue of being erased, being invisibilized. Like people do not want African labor to be recognized, and it's in all sectors. When you're thinking of content moderation, when you even think of content creators, like what does it mean that if you have views from outside Africa, you're being paid more? What nonsense is that? Like, you're centering your experiences to the African audience, you know? And also, you know, it's a continuation, as you keep saying, it's a continuation of the inequalities that exist, the stratification of everything, like all the isms and schisms that exist. And I will give 1 or 2 questions. We have a hard stop at 4 p.m., so we have 7 minutes to go. But if anyone wants to ask a question, if not, we'll check the questions in the chat and we'll then be able to go. But you just raise your hand and ask the question. That will be faster. I know there's some questions in the chat though.
Thanks, Angela. I will maybe just read the ones in the chat as people maybe think. So there was a question by Christofina around I found Jackie's point about workers being sold the idea that they're self-employed, whether as contractors or consultants, interesting. I want to ask, do you think it would be worthwhile to push back against that narrative, especially in contexts where it undermines worker protections? And are there existing efforts that are already challenging this illusion of agency among platform workers? Jackie, you have a minute to answer that. I know it's a loaded question, but yeah.
I'll try to be as quick as possible. So yeah, it's a loaded question, and there's been like so many interventions globally in terms of the misclassification of workers as independent contractors, because that's the kind of contract that workers, especially in the e-healing sector, normally they sign. And we've had even cases, for example, in South Africa, where the CCMA had like a very good decision around whether Uber workers are actually employees, but that unfortunately was overturned, and the Labour Court was quite silent in terms of the classification issue, which I think that it was really a missed opportunity. But then we've had also like other examples under which workers have been classified as employees, and from New Zealand, Netherlands, and Spain, and also in the UK. And also there has been other cases where the courts have said, no, they are actually independent contractors. So it really depends on where you are looking at, and decisions have been very different in terms of approaches. And that's why having a legal framework that actually recognizes and ensures that all workers are protected despite their employment relationship is very key. But also while looking at the issue of control in terms of the labor platforms, under which they have control over wages, they have control over deactivation, which can be seen as dismissals, and all these kind of controls that that platforms have over workers really need to be taken into consideration. And maybe if you need like more information around the issue of misclassification and some of the strategies that, especially from the, a legal aspect, you can look at our publication, that is the International Lawyers Assisting Workers Network publication, where we have a Taken for a Ride 1, 2, and there's another one that is upcoming, which just summarizes all the cases globally that has been filed by workers, but also advocates in terms of the issues of not only misclassification, but just dismissal and all that. And I can also share in the chat. But finally, I want also to insist that legal approaches cannot just be advanced in a vacuum. So there's a need to approach the legal strategies more broadly in terms of organizing, in terms of workers, building workers' capacity, but also in terms of enforcement, because you can have a law, but rather the enforcement, then it's law, because either workers do not know about it, or even the enforcement mechanism are not clear, or any other issue. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
I saw someone's hand
Thank
up,
you, Joy.
Angela.
Oh, okay.
I think is it Mami? Hope I'm
Mami
pronouncing that.
Masimane.
Yeah, I think I saw their hand up, but I'm not sure. But also our time, so maybe we can start to
Can you jump to the
close.
one last question from the chat, then we can close.
Oh, the question was from Chennai, but it's around legal and policy environment. So Chennai asked, are there examples of current labor policies or practices that have been used to legislate for worker protection? Really important point on working on implementation on what is there. The reading list that I've shared does have the work that Jacqueline and the team at ILAW Network have been doing. So yeah, I don't know if anyone has an answer to that.
Okay, I think then we can stop, and because I also recognize some of us are tired of the zooming into Zoom meetings all day, and it's the end of the day, at least in East Africa. So I truly appreciate your time. I truly appreciate you taking time to attend this session, and we'll be very happy to keep tabs on social media. And thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.